Hello and welcome. So today we'll be discussing one of the very important problem of LeetCode, which is problem number 1605, and the problem is find valid matrix given row and column sum. So what you have given row sum and column sum, and you have to find the valid matrix. So what this problem is all about. So let me read this problem for you. So you are given a two arrays. You have given a two arrays. One is known as row sum and another is known as column sum. Fine. Of a non-negative integers. Fine. These are actually a positive integers, fine, of a non-negative integers, where non-negative integers means where zero is included. Fine. Zero is included. So you have to keep this in mind. Non-negative means zero and positive. Fine. Okay. So where a row sum I is the sum of element of ith row. That is a row sum I. If I say about any row, then row sum I is containing the sum of element of ith row. Similarly, column sum j is the sum of the element of jth column of a 2D matrix. So what it is all about, I'll be explaining by taking an example that will become easy for you to understand. Okay, fine. In other words, you do not know the element of the matrix, but you do know the sum of each row and column. That is, you don't know what are element of a matrix. If I say this is a 2 cross, this is a matrix, 2D matrix. So what actually you know the sum of rows, you know the sum of columns, but you don't know what these elements are. You actually don't know what these elements are. Suppose if this is a 3 cross 3 matrix, so you know what is the sum of this, what is the sum of this, what is the sum of this row, you know the sum of this column, sum of this column, sum of this column, but you actually don't know what comes here, what comes here, what comes here and here. Fine. So this is what actually the problem is. Let me read further for you. Now comes the question that find any matrix non-negative integer size row sum in length into column sum length. That is, suppose row sum length is 3, column sum length is 3. Fine, that you have to find 3 cross 3 matrix. Your job is to find 3 cross 3 matrix. Then matrix should have an element, fine, that satisfied, which actually satisfied row sum and column sum. That is, you have to return a 2D array representing any matrix that fulfills the requirement. It is guaranteed, very important, at least one matrix that fulfills the requirement. So there will be existing one matrix. It will not be like something like that where no such matrix exists. So before if I will not take the example, it will become tough for you to understand. So let me take one example from this question itself, so that it become easy for you to understand what I'm talking about. So let's take one example. Now I'm taking this example, so let me explain you about using this example. So fine, okay, yes. So here you have given row sum, that is row sum is 5, 7 and 10, and then column sum is 8, 6, 8. So let me make one matrix for you. Okay, fine. What it is given, row sum is given 5, then 7 and then 10. Fine. Okay, and then column sum is given 8, 6 and 8. Now your job is to find this element, this. Fine. So your job is to find these elements. Let me change the color of my pen so that it become easy for you to understand. Now how will I able to judge? I know the sum of these all element is 5. I know that sum of all these element of a column is 8. But what this element will have? So the method, there could be n number of methods, fine. So the method which I'm just going to discuss with you right now is one of the easiest method, fine. So what, how to do, how to solve this question is that first initialize the entire matrix with 0 element. So let me rub all these things, fine. So let initialize all the matrix with 0 element. So I have initialized the entire matrix with 0th value, fine, with 0. Okay, now you have to start the matrix. Suppose I is representing the row and j is representing the column. The length of row sum is 3, the length of column sum is 3. That is, you have to build a 3 cross 3 matrix, fine. Okay, now what to do? From the pointer I to the pointer j, find the minimum value among two. So out of 5, okay, so there are two pointers I and j, fine. So there are two pointers I and j. Find the minimum among two. So out of 5 and 8, which is minimum 5? So change here, make it 5. Now reduce the selected element from both I and j. So if you reduce 5 from 5, it will become 0. Fine. And if you reduce 5 from 8, it will become 3. Fine. Okay. Now the parameter which becomes 0 will No, will be increased, since I is a what you can say is a pointer which whose value becomes 0, so it will be increase, so it will increase from this position to this position. Fine. So where I am right now, I'm at this position. Fine, because j is at this position, I is at this position. Now find minimum between the two, that is 7 and 3. So 7, which is minimum, 7 and 3, 3 is minimum. So finally 3, we will replace this with 3. Now reduce the selected value. So if you reduce the selected value, it will become 0 and it will become what? 4. If you reduce 3 from 7, it will become 4. Now which becomes 0? I or j? J becomes 0. So I'll increment j. J will come here. So finally I'm at which position? Here. So among 4 and 6, which is minimum? 4. So I'll replace it with 4. Fine. Okay. Now I'll replace and reduce 4 from both I and j. So when I'll reduce, this 4 will become 0 and this 6 will become 2. So the which pointer has become 0? I. So I'll increment I will point here. J will remain at its own position. Now where I am right now? Here. Fine. So among 10 and 2, which is minimum? 2 is minimum. So I'll replace it with 2. I'll reduce 2 from both I and j. It will become 8 and it will become 0. Since j has become 0, it will get incremented. Fine. It will come here. Now where I'm actually pointing? I'm pointing here. So out of I and j, which is minimum? Both are 8. It could be 8, take it, it can be any 8. Fine. So I'll replace it with 8. Now both become 0. Now no need to do that something. Fine. So the both become 0. So finally what you have, got the matrix. So have you actually achieved the correct matrix? Now let me remove all those things. Fine. 8, 6 and 8. Fine. Okay, then 8, 6 and 8. Let me remove this. Okay, 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 then fine. So this is 5. Fine. Okay, okay, okay. So now see, have you got the answer? So the sum of this row is 5. Very right. Fine. The sum of this row is 5. Very correct. The sum of this column is 5, 3, 8. Correct. The sum of this column is 6. Very correct. The sum of this row is 7. Very correct. Fine. So actually you have got the answer. So this is actually the method. This is the method which you have to apply for solving this question, which is find the valid matrix. Now you might be thinking that your answer is 5 0 0 3 4 0 and then 0 to 8. List of list, I'm talking of Python. Fine, it's a list of list. So you have got this matrix. So you might be thinking that, oh, I'm not getting the same answer. This answer is 050, my answer is 500. So there could be a number of ways to solve this question. I gave you one way. So I'll be also discussing how they have solved, how they have given you this input and output. So let us build first code. That will become easy for you to understand. So let's build the code so that you can understand what this problem is all about. Fine. So okay, let's start with the code. So I'm taking Python. So I'm building my code in Python itself. So let's have two variable. One is rows. Fine. And let's say another is columns. COLS, columns. So you can take any rows and column, whatever you want, you can take. Fine. And let this be equal to, fine, length of, you have what you have given. You have given row sum. If I'm not wrong, you have given a row sum, yes, and you have given column sum. Let me show you. Let me show you. Okay, see this. So you have given one row sum and the column sum, and this length is the length of this. So length of row sum, fine, and then it comes calls length of call sum, COL. You have to use the same variable name as it is given. See, you can see row sum and column sum. You cannot change. You are not allowed to change anything like that. Fine. So you have initialized both the variable row sum and column sum with value of length of row sum and length of column sum. Fine. Then comes next thing. Then next part is, okay, you have, let's take one matrix mat, and now what I'll do, I'll be initializing this matrix with all element having 0 element. So how list comprehension is used for, okay, for j in, where j is representing suppose column. So for j in range, calls, COLS, calls. Fine. For j in calls, then after that it comes for I in range, for I in range, rows ROWS. I wonder why this is red in color. I wonder. Okay, fine. Yeah, I got the point because of indentation problem. Fine. Okay. So, what is the meaning of this line? This is actually a list comprehension in Python. So what am I doing is that, what you actually do for, suppose I'm taking an example of C language. What for rows and column, what do you do for I? You runs the loop of I for, for number of rows, then you run for j in, then you runs for columns, and then what you do matrix. Suppose our matrix is uh, then you initialize this with 0. So this is what you do in C language. So what you all can do in number of lines, you can do by list comprehension in a single line. So what am I doing over here is that I'm using j loop for columns, I'm using loop I for a number of rows, and for all those values I'm initializing it with 0. Fine. So nothing is something very different which I'm doing over here. It's all very common thing. Fine. So let me proceed further to build the code then. Okay, then let's. So what we did right now, we have created two rows and columns and initialized with the length of rows and column, and I have initialized one matrix by the name of mat, and the value is now having 0. All the element. Now I have two variables I and j. You can take any variable and let initialize it again with 0. So I'm having two variable I and j, and I'm initializing it with its value 0. Now am I taking a loop while I is less than rows, ROWS, and very important, and j is less than columns, COLS, columns. Fine. So what am I doing is here is that my till when I have to move, till my I and j are less than rows and columns. This is a common sense, very common sense. What next then? Then we have to find what matrix I and j. Matrix I and j is what is actually a minimum of, minimum of row sum I, comma, row sum j. Very important. You might be thinking that. So when we have taken one matrix, let me make one matrix for you then. What was that? I don't know. I do not exactly remember what was the 5 6 10. If I'm not wrong. Yes, it was 5 6 10, and it was 8 8 6 10, something like that. I don't know, do not exactly remember. So what actually you was doing? So you was taking minimum from these, no? Fine. So this element matrix IJ, this is 0 0, will be what? Minimum of 2. So this matrix 0 0 will be minimum of row sum I, that is this and this. Fine. Okay. So let me move again further. Fine. Okay. So I'm so sorry for this. Where I was actually, yes, I was here. Okay. Then what I have to do is that then I have to reduce that element. Fine. Reduce that number. Row sum of I, what it will become, minus equal to what you have, it will become mat of I, comma j, the element which you have selected for that matrix. Reduce that element from what? Row sum, and reduce that same element from column sum also. This is what we did. We are doing now is that reduce same thing from column sum, COLSUM, call sum. What? Call sum. For call sum we are using value of j, and that you have to reduce, that is minus is equal to matrix of that you of I, and then you have to reduce that from j also. Fine. So this is what you are actually doing now. Now then comes fine. So on reducing you have to check that which pointer needs to be moved, that which value has become 0. Either I have to move I or I have to move j. Fine. Okay. So in that case, what you're doing, if what? If row sum, ROWSUM, if row sum of I is equal to 0, then in that case what you have to do, you have to increment I. Fine. This is what I already told you, that this is plus equal to 1, then in that case you have to increment I. Else, not else, if only, if not else, if call sum, COLSUM, call sum j has what become 0, then you have to move that also. Fine. Else means what? You have to check only one. But here, using if in both the cases, that you have to check both the statement. Fine. Then you have to increment j. That you have to increment j by 1. Fine. On doing all such thing, what you do? You just return what? The matrix you created. You have created what? Matrix mat. Fine. So you have to return. Fine. You have to return that matrix. Fine. So what you are actually doing, let me explain you now. So let me rub all these things. Fine. So let's take the example, same example, by which I will be explaining you very clearly. Fine. Okay. So you let's take example. Row sum is 577. It's 5, 7, and 10, and column sum is 8, 6, and 8. Fine. What you did? You took rows and column from length of row sum and column. So length of row sum is 3 and column sum is, so rows is now 3, calls is a variable is 3. You what you did, you made one matrix, and by using what, this list comprehension, that is for I is equal to 0, from range of rows, for j in range of column, you are initializing each element with zeros. What you are actually doing is you are initializing each and every element of the matrix with value 0. Fine. Now you have again created two variable I and j, and you have initialized those value with value 0. Fine. So till these three lines, it's become very clear now. Now what you are doing is you are using a while loop. While I is less than rows and while j is less than column, it's currently true. So what you did, you are finding what, minimum of row sum I in column. So what you are actually doing, you are finding minimum, because your I is here, your j is here, you are finding minimum of these two, and you are replacing that value here. So mat 0 0 matrix 0 0 element will be a minimum of both. So minimum of both is 5. So this has become 5. Now what I told you, that you have to reduce this 5 selected 5 from both the row sum and column sum. So row sum I will have what, subtraction of this mat ij, so it will become 0, and this column sum will become 3 on reducing this value 5. Now what you have to check, which pointer you need to move, I or j. Is row sum I equal to 0? Yes, row sum I is now 0. Increment I will get incremented. Is column sum j equal to 0? No, this will not get incremented. So keep on, when you keep on doing the same procedure, what you will get, you will get the answer, and after getting answer, you will return this matrix. Fine, but only this much. So let's run the code, so that let's run this code. Fine. Okay, so let me run this code now for you. Okay, fine. So the code is actually running, accepted. You have put 3, 8, and 4, 7, and this is clear cut. It's running. Now let me submit the code. Let me submit the code. Okay, fine, it's accepted. So let's come to the description part once again, and you might be wondering why I haven't no shown you the method which they are using, how my answer is differ from their answer. So I'll be discussing those also, this thing also. So okay, let's use this pen. Okay, fine. So let me explain what they people are using, how they are solving this question. Fine. So okay, so what they are doing the same job. Fine. 5 7 10 8 6 8, how they are getting 0 5 0 is like this. So what they are doing is that they are finding what they are finding, minimum of the entire row is this, minimum of the entire column sum is this. Now among these two, they are selecting minimum. So what is minimum? It's 5, and it's 5 and 6. From 5 and 6 they are getting 5, so it will become 1. Fine. And it will become 0. Now again they'll find minimum, so minimum from this and minimum from this, excluding 0. So minimum of this is what, this is 7. Fine. And then minimum of this is 1. So this will become this will become, yes, exactly. So this will become 1. So 7 and 1 will give you what, 1. Fine. So this will become 0. Fine. This will become 0. Now they are and this will become 6. So again from 8 and 6 it will become 6. So because of this, they are getting 0 5 0 6 1 0. So this is their own method of solving the question. So till then, I thought I have explained you in a best and possible manner what this how this problem can be solved. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.